Hey, beloved. Hope you are good. Man, I'm excited tonight. It's been a while since I've done a kid-friendly lesson, and I am excited. This information is really, really good. There's been a lot of stuff that's been going on, in Florida and other places like that, trying to prevent teachers from teaching the truth, right? Teaching our history, all of American history. So anyway, we're going to take care of a lot of that tonight. So in advance, if you've got kids, there are pieces of the history they don't know, even though this is an introduction. I am going to go into a few things tonight. Those of you that have been following me know how I do. I do an overview, but I can't help but add a few bits and pieces. So there are going to be some nuggets tonight for them to carry with them. And I'm going to give you quite a few sources. I'll remind you now, and maybe hopefully do it later, that if you have an opportunity to watch this on YouTube, that is a good idea, because YouTube is stagnant. On Facebook, if you're watching on Facebook Live, it moves. But on YouTube, it's stagnant. You can stop it. Oh, let me see, what's the name of that book? And you can get that stuff written down. One of the things I'm proud of, and this is not being braggadocious, probably shouldn't say it, I don't like to preface like that, but a lot of the materials that I'm using are from books that I own. And some of the things that are mentioned in some of the documentaries and things that I watch are things that I own. So I'm excited about that. I am blessed by that. So anyway, I'm your host. Glad that you're here, desiring always to make you the absolute smartest person in the room as it pertains to these topics that I share with you. So welcome to the Man Cave. Down here in the Man Cave, gonna do some Black History Month stuff. You are hanging out with your very own knowledge junkie that just, consumes this information and can't wait to put it out to you. If you are watching this on Facebook, as I always ask you, please, please, please like it. Lots and lots of liking it and sharing it, all right? If you are watching this on, I don't even know what I said. If you're watching this on Facebook, like and share it. If you're watching it on YouTube, please, please subscribe and share what you're learning, what you're being exposed to. Sure would appreciate it. I'm also letting you know that I am on TikTok, Jackie Jackson at 1195. And I've got some videos that are posted. As a matter of fact, I may be posting another video tonight. So I want you to, check that out. All right. Please, please, please take a look at the stuff that I got going on there. All right. I'm blessed. I got some Bible stuff that I want to do first as a foundation that I think is really, really important for us to get. Oh, that camera's trying to do that again? What is going on the left side, man? That's weird. So weird. I don't get it. I may go back to that camera, but it's not locking completely, but I don't like looking like I got the rickets or the jitters or something like that. All right? Okay, story time. And notice it doesn't say adult, because it is for everybody. So we're going to go right now. We're going to take a look at some Bible stuff. And I know that this is not perfect for you to see, but I'm going to read it to you directly out of the Bible. I always think the Bible is the best place to lay a foundation, right? To understand who we are, where we come from. But this is about understanding how God sees you. And I say, stole it from Rod Parsley, can't just read the Bible, you have to read the Bible. Right? You can't just read the Bible. You have to read it. You have to study it. You have to look at the depth of what it's trying to say to you. And that may mean defining some words or getting a good commentary that can break some of this stuff down for you. Now listen, child or adult, listen very closely as I lay a foundation so that you understand that this is how God has always felt about you. Verse 1, it says, listen, Ethiopia, land of fluttering sails that lies in the headwaters of the Nile. They travel. They're traveling. I've talked about this in other videos. They're traveling, right? They move around a lot. Came to America all the way from over there. That sends ambassadors in swift boats down the river. Go, swift messengers. Take a message. Listen. This is what he's telling the prophets to do. To a small and excuse me. That was absolutely opposite. To a tall and smooth-skinned people. Hold on to that. To a tall and smooth-skinned people who are feared far and wide. These black folks are feared. They're warriors, right? They're feared far and wide for their conquest and destruction, and whose land is divided by the rivers. Okay, what land is divided by the rivers? Let me show you this, and then I'm going to break that scripture down. You hold on to that word for me? Did you hold on to that? Tall and smooth-skinned people. This is the area, okay? Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, all in that territory. Black folks then, many black folks are still there now. The word smooth skin, tall and smooth skin, these conquerors that he's talking about. When God speaks these words, the word smooth skin means marats. And the word marats, M-A-R-A-T-S, if you're transferring it from Hebrew to English, it means polished to perfection. So when God describes black and brown skin, he says it's perfect. That's universal. He's talking to the Ethiopians here, but I got the same color skin that they have. And you that are listening, may have the same color skin that they have. There's no arrogance in that. The God of heaven, the God of the universe, made the declaration that your skin is marats. Your skin is polished to perfection. When he looks at you, he sees beauty. That's something you need to carry with you everywhere you go. That you, in God's eyes, are beautiful. Another verse I want to give you. This is another place where, you have to understand what's being said. I am black, but comely. O daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. All right. Now, what this is talking about here is she later describes that she's been in the sun, so she's darker than the other black people that are around her, the other brown-skinned, black-skinned people that are around her. Okay, there's nobody white. Okay, it's not a racial thing. There's nobody that's white. This is in Africa. And she says, I'm dark, but the key word here is comely. It means attractive. It means beautiful. I'm black, but I'm beautiful. Look at that nugget that's right there in Scripture. God's describing black people as beautiful. And this woman describes herself that even though I've gotten darker because I've been out working in the fields, I've been out working in the sun, even though I've gotten darker than I was before, I am still beautiful and attractive. Well, we know that's true because Solomon, in the Song of Solomon or Song of Songs, it can sometimes be rendered, you will see where he's got the hots for this woman. And I can show you in scripture, and believe me, I will. Not today, but I'm going to show you where the woman that was most pursued, the darker the better. I can prove that. And I'm going to prove that. Listen, and this is to be careful, not to the exclusion of anybody else, but it's the truth that's been left out. One word changed everything just then. Because she says that she's beautiful. So let's use that as our foundation, and as we work our way through these various situations that we see in Scripture. Let's use that kind of thinking as our foundation. And the world is starting to catch up slowly with Black beauty. Universe, world, teen, USA. I mean, it's happening. And I believe that it's going to continue. But one of the reasons I gave you this foundation is because of something that Marcus Garvey said, and we'll deal with Marcus Garvey when we get to his era. It says, a people without knowledge, without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without a root. It's so true. And one of the things that I desire to show to you, in the diaspora, in the time that we were brought here, there are gaps in our history. But you can replace that, right? You're not a lost people where we don't know what happened to us or where we came from prior to slavery. The Bible takes care of that, and you have people in Black biblical history. The Bible is Black history. Where's his book? I don't have there's a book by that title. You have an opportunity to learn your roots in a different way because they're lined all the way through Scripture. All you have to do is read it, understand it, get some maps, understand where these people are, or you can watch my videos over and over again and use those as springboards, because I don't like it if you just listen to what I'm saying, but use that as a way of doing research so you know your connection. Now, let me give you one more preface as we move into Black History Month and taking a look at the accomplishments of Black people during the Reconstruction era. There are, and I teach them, I told you my master's thesis, for those that maybe didn't see the advertisement, my master's thesis is on this topic, Reconstruction. Okay, used over 100 books for my master's thesis. 100-page minimum. They weren't playing with us. 100-page minimum. My bibliography page was 8 pages long, one source after another. And most of those books are either across from me at a table, upstairs on a very long table, on 2 separate bookshelves, and there's a stack here you can't see that camera number 2 is on, and some others that are around it. In other words, this isn't just a good idea for me. This is something that I have studied extensively and maybe know more about than any other era. You're not going to get all of it, but you'll get enough of it. And so I'm saying that to make sure that you are aware, that I am aware, that there are atrocities and tragedies that happened during this period of time. Now, I'm not going to say this every time. This is an introduction. So somebody watching this later and say, well, I ain't talking about this tragedy and that sure happened and that. No. Because even in the midst of that, there are great things that happened, things that were accomplished anyway. that we should be proud of anyway. And so that's where my focus is going to be, on the good things that we did and maybe had to endure some serious hardships in order to bring it to pass, but we still did it anyway. And I want to talk about what was accomplished. I'll certainly go back some other time and talk about the horrors to get us there. But the reason this is for the kids is I just want to talk about the good stuff, and this is exactly how this can be taught in school. You can touch on that there were some rough spots. You got to pay attention to the age of the children. But you can teach this. This can be taught. All right? So I'm going to show you a very short video, and after that, we'll talk a little bit on the other side. But we're moving on in. This is about the relationship between Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. All right, here we go.
Douglass's relationship with Abraham Lincoln did not begin well. Douglass was a ferocious critic of Lincoln during the first year and a half of the Civil War. But the story is remarkable because they grew toward one another in their views not only of the meaning of the war, but of the process of emancipation itself.
All right, that's very, very brief. The idea, Frederick Douglass had a very strong personality, and he didn't mind, even back then, even as an escaped slave and people hunting him and all of that. He's a very bold man. And he didn't mind speaking up for himself or for his people, and a lot of good things came out of that boldness. Now, tonight I'm going to do something a little bit different. I normally just memorize some of these things, but I'm going to do some reading tonight. Emancipation Proclamation. Although on January 1st, 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared all slaves in areas to the rebellious to the Union, they were to be free. And then I wrote, because this is my stuff, and then I wrote, his feelings were ambivalent. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but Abraham Lincoln had written a letter about the Union to a friend of his. And in that letter, he told the friend it didn't matter to him, in essence, whether or not the slaves were free or stayed in slavery. His goal was that the country stay unified. That didn't happen, right? Because there were states in the South seceded from the Union. So we ended up with a civil war to reestablish the Union. Now, I'm not saying his feelings remain that way. I am just saying that there was some conflict that was in there, and some question as to what was most important to him. And Sojourner Truth, as well as Frederick Douglass, helped to keep things on track. That this is the goal. This is what we're after. Okay? The next thing that I want to talk about is soldiers that fought in the Civil War that were people of color, that were black. There were a lot of people that didn't want that. I mean, there were 200,000. And Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass for sure, was advocating own freedom. Certainly they're very motivated, but to be able to fight for their own freedom. And there was a man that was involved in this who is considered to be a little bit more of the catalyst, the promoter of this that was successful, that isn't well known. His name was Abraham Galloway. He was a spy for the North. He was also a recruiter of soldiers for the North and advocated that the black man be able to fight for his own freedom. Let me read this. In 1863, black soldiers were allowed to fight to liberate the Southern slaves, as Frederick Douglass had been promoting. The Massachusetts 54th Regiment was the first black unit. And this was the same year that Abraham also revealed his plan for Reconstruction. Abraham Galloway, he also became a senator. I believe it was South Carolina, a state senator for South Carolina. Very important person to know and put in your knowledge arsenal that made a major difference in whether or not black people could fight for their own freedom. We're very aware of Frederick Douglass, but we're not all, most people have never heard of Abraham Galloway. I'll give you a minute. Let your brain assimilate and accommodate that new information. And then we move on. Very special date in history as we move towards Reconstruction is the war ends, and then we have Reconstruction. On April 9th, 1865, at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia, Robert E. Lee, the commanding general of the Confederate Army, surrendered. War's over. What's going to happen next? What's the next move? Well, we have things like 13th Amendment that says all the slaves are free. Slavery is unconstitutional. It is illegal. 14th Amendment says that black people, former slaves, have the same rights as white people to go anywhere and do anything. Awesome, isn't it? Things were changing quick. Let me throw this in. Reconstruction, because the war ends, the Emancipation Proclamation is 1863. The war had started in 1861. The war ends in 1865. 1861, beginning of the war. 1863, Emancipation Proclamation. The war is already going on, so it really didn't change a lot of things. It just, it's a strong declaration. It's how it's going to be once the North wins. And 1865, the war has ended, and these amendments start. And the most impactful one, as far as black folks were concerned, was the 15th Amendment. Now, before I read this piece that I have for the 15th Amendment, I want to make sure, and I'm going to say this twice. In 1965, August the 6th, 1965, there was a Voting Rights Act, not an amendment. Why? Because the 15th Amendment that gave black people the right to vote already existed. If you're a citizen, you can vote. And you may be watching this and have never heard that before. That you are not aware of the fact that the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is a restoration. Getting rid of all of the other is a restoration of the right to vote, which had been taken care of February the 3rd, 1870. That was when black folks got the right to vote. I wish I had a wow face or something to throw up there, because I want that to sink in. Very important to just understand those two. The Civil War is just the 14th Amendment being activated, put back in place, functioning as it should. But again, focusing on the 15th Amendment, which made us feel like, hey, we're in a position now to vote in who we want in. And certainly we did a lot of that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the power of the vote and the number of people that were affected by it. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you a little outline of it, even though we're not going into detail tonight, so that you understand what all of this, the power that was there and what that means. All right, let me read this to you. After the 15th Amendment was ratified, that means put in place, many anti-slavery organizations disbanded. They believed that their 40 years of efforts had finally paid off. The Republican Party saw it as an end of their work for blacks. There was pandemonium in the streets, even though there had been recent violence against blacks. Many believed the amendment was the final victory necessary for equality. Celebrations were occurring all over the South. This is when the right to vote was first established, because this was an example, black folks and white folks, well-meaning people, thought was an example of what full citizenship looked like. It just wasn't on paper. People had the ability to exercise their citizenship. So we're going to deal with more of that and the effect of that. We're also going to talk about education. The earlier video that we saw here is, am I right here? This is the book that was on the video, and well, I'll save that one. And this is the thing that we're looking at right now. This is my copy of W.E.B. Du Bois. The one of the things that you are going to discover as we talk about this. Let me do this. Just bear with me just for a second. All right. I just want to make sure you can see these clearly. Got that? Got that? If you're on YouTube and you want to pause that so you can see it, there it is. There's that book that was mentioned again in the video. And one more time, let me do this. This is the Bible that I read from. And I'm actually going to do a little more of this at the end, but I'm going to go ahead and throw these in now since I got behind on them. I had my mind somewhere else. This is the book that talks about Return to Glory, talks about that's where the word Marats is defined and explained. It's a great book. I actually have a couple of copies and the video. I don't know how I got a second copy, but I do know how I got the first one in the video. And Joel Freeman, the doctor who's mentioned in this book, I've had the pleasure of meeting him, sitting next to him, having some, good conversation, that kind of thing. He's from Canada, doesn't have a dog in the fight. So he can just write an honest book about the prophecies and things that he sees in Scripture that he believes God's going to do. And, it's a great blessing. It's a great blessing. All right. What we will discover in W.E.B. Du Bois's book, and we'll talk, I'll probably actually read this from it, that there were people, adults, that wanted to learn to read the Bible. So let me rephrase that. They wanted to learn to read because they wanted to read the Bible for themselves before they died. And there were some tricky ways. Kids would go to school during the day, and when the kids came home as they did their lesson, the parents would go to school after they've been working in the field all day so they could learn some things, learn how to read. And some fascinating, and I'll get more into that. The thing that I do want to say about the black schools, right after Reconstruction, I date Reconstruction. Most people date it. Where's Eric Foner's book? From about from 1865, not from about. This says 1863, but he's doing some, it's not how he's dating Reconstruction. Reconstruction started after the war, 1865, and some say 1877. I date it to 1880 when Rutherford B. Hayes became the president. I'll explain all of that. A little bit later. But the what I'm trying to get to is, listen, the schools in the South that had been developed by the Freedmen's Bureau and other Christians that black kids were going to were better than the white schools that were in the South. Make sure that you hear what I'm telling you. There was no problem with integration or caring about anything like that. Certainly would have been beautiful. Didn't come up as a part of conversation, but I'm in any, major way. But the schools in the South, the best teachers from the North, made their way to the South because they looked at the former young slaves as refugees, and I'm talking about white teachers and black teachers. And I'm going to finish this. I'm going a little bit further than I should. The normal schools, Southern normal school, and where my mother grew up in Bruton, Alabama, the normal schools were teaching schools, and their purpose was to be taught and go into these schools and educate children. And their levels of education and dedication, the building of schools, all those kinds of things made them better. Better funded than the white schools that were in the South. During this period of time and just after, that's where we get our HBCUs. You look at the founding dates of many of the historical black colleges and universities, it is during the Reconstruction era or just after. Because the people that had the freedom to learn things during that time founded schools, even if it's just after. They were able to found, I don't know if that structure is right in that sentence, schools. That's where our colleges and universities came out of the effects of the Reconstruction era, educating our own and them getting college degrees. Regardless of everything else that was going on. Black success, black education at every level was going on in wonderful ways. You still with me? Getting ready to close this thing out. You still with me? We'll dig into these things even more. All right. I got one more thing I want to talk to you about that I don't know. It's on the level. Well, we'll spend more time here, but it's on a level of one of my favorite things to discuss, and that is black politics. Well, why, Pastor Jackie? Why is that on such a high level for you? Here, let me see if camera 2 will act right. Just for a second, will you act right for me? How Black is the Gospel by Tom Skinner. Now, there are covers for this that are better than what I'm showing you. I've had this for a long time. And there is a listing in here of all of, and I'll read through it, the black senators, not today, of black senators and congressmen going to state and federal service as senators and congressmen, ambassadors that we had, Are you hearing me? Something like 95% of them were ministers. Where was the church? Right in the middle of all of it. And many of them lost their lives in the service of folks. But it was worth it to them. And I'll tell you some stories about that. But the sheer numbers will impress you. Kids need to know that. Might not be as fun as a video game, but you need to know that we had more congressmen and senators, both at the state and federal level, than we have now in the 1800s during Reconstruction. We had more then. When I read these numbers to you, you'll see it. It's over and over again. And sometimes, in some places, in the South, there were more black than white. Hard to even fathom that. But yet and still, it's very true. Hard to wrap your head around it, but it's true. A lot of black success, a lot to be proud of, a lot of accomplishments, a lot of wonderful things that we have been able to do, that it just the story needs to be told. So again, I've gone through all of my resources except for one. One of the things that we are going to discuss is we're going to take a look at black settlements in Ohio. But I'm going to tell you that there were hundreds of settlements that became towns, of black settlements and towns, black inventors, black CEOs, both in the past and today. But I'm talking about during the Reconstruction era and just after, that started towns. Hundreds. So much to be proud of. We only know about a few. This is a whole book about them. But we need to have this information. We need to know. We need to know about black success. Right? One other book that I didn't mention. Isabel Wilkerson. Now, her maybe her most famous book, I'm not sure, but it could be not Cast. I have Cast on CD as well as the book. But The Warmth of Other Suns is a book, it looks exactly like this, that's about the Great Migration from the South to the North. And we are going to explore some of that when we get to that era. Okay? Got you going? Got enough to chew on for a little while? A little bit shocked with some of this? I hope so. I hope so. We're going to keep it going. I'm Pastor Jackie Jackson. I thank you so much for joining me tonight. Learning something, learning about people that you didn't know about. Having some resources that you can get from, some of this stuff you can get from the library. Get a library card. Read, I hear, this statement. I'll close with this. If you want to hide something from black people, put it in a book. I may not be saying that exactly the way it is, the way the saying goes, but I'm not going to believe that. I love reading too much for it to be included in anything like that, but I'm not going to believe that. I'm going to believe that you are going to put forth the energy to start consuming knowledge, and as you get hungry, you'll be like me. You'll be a knowledge junkie. What else don't I know about my people? What else don't I know about history? What else does the Bible have to say about black folks? What is it, secular and biblical, that I don't know? I want to know. Thank you tonight for joining me on the Urban Apologetics channel.